We're going to focus today on how to solve absolute value equations. Now, absolute value equations are set up sort of like this. What they always have is they always have a variable and an absolute value symbol around the variable or part of the variable. And the key idea here is to think about what absolute value means. It means the distance from zero. So when you go ahead and you do absolute value, there's two possible values that have 0.07 as an answer. One of them is just going to be the easy one, and that's just 0.7. But there's another one. If you take the absolute value of negative 0.7, then that's also going to be 0.7, because when you take the absolute values of negative 0.7, it's just 0.7. So on these, the key idea of this slide is this idea that you're going to go ahead and come up with two solutions when you remove the absolute value symbol. So here's another problem, and what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and try and solve this. We've got to do a little bit of work though, but we have to get rid of the absolute value symbols first. And when we do that, we need to think, well, m plus 3, that value could either be 7 or negative 7. Because if it's negative 7, if this here is negative 7, the total between the absolute value symbols, then the absolute value of negative 7 is going to be 7. If this value is 7, then it's also going to be 7, the absolute value of that. So let's go ahead and divide this up into two separate problems. First one, I'll write in red here. That's the straightforward one. M plus 3 is equal to 7. The second one is going to be m plus 3 is equal to negative 7. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 3. I'm left with m is equal to 4. Then I'm going to subtract 3, m is equal to negative 10. And we can always check these out by plugging them back in. If m is negative 10 here, I'm going to have negative 10 plus 3, that's negative 7. Absolute value of negative 7 is 7. If m is 4, it's going to be 4 plus 3 is 7. The absolute value of 7 is 7. So for this type of problem, we've got some stuff on the outside of the absolute value symbols, and we've got stuff on the inside that we've got to deal with. And you always have to deal with the stuff that's on the outside of the absolute value symbols before you deal with the stuff on the inside. So the very first step here is going to be, well, this is 3 times the absolute value of 13 minus 2t is equal to 15. So the very first thing I'm going to do to this whole thing is I'm going to divide both sides by 3. When I divide both sides by 3, I'm now left with the absolute value of 13 minus 2t is equal to 5. Now I'm going to break this apart into two different problems. First one is going to be 13 minus 2t is equal to 5. And the second one is going to be 13 minus 2t is equal to negative 5. So when I solve these, this is what happens. I go ahead and I subtract 13 from both sides. Then I divide both sides by negative 2. And on this one here, I get t is equal to 4. I plug that back in. I see it works. Here, I subtract 13 again. Divide by negative 2. It's the same procedure. And then I'm going to end up with t is equal to 9. And that also works. Remember, you can just plug them in and see. Here, once again, we have stuff on the outside we need to take care of first. So we're going to subtract 8 from both sides. Then we're left with absolute value of y minus 4 is equal to negative 2. Okay, at this point, the reason why I did this problem is there's a key idea here. If ever you get to the point where you have an absolute value expression with nothing else on it, on one side, is equal to something of a negative value, that can't work because this stuff here has to have a positive value. So this is going to be one of those pesky ones that just says no solution. And that only happens when you have an expression that has an absolute value symbol around the whole thing is equal to a negative value. Last part here, and this is really the easiest thing here. If you have a given value, we're going to talk about absolute deviation. That just means how far away something is from a number. If we have a given value of 8 and the absolute deviation is 10, that means it could be either 8 plus 10, which is equal to 18, or it could be 8 minus 10, which is equal to negative 2. Those are the two possible values for the absolute deviation.